Thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time out of your day. We are here. It is September 4th. It is 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we know you're all over the maps. For some people, it's a morning. For some of us, it's late in the afternoon. Some it's evening. Thank you so much for joining us on this presentation of Security Center, maintaining the highest levels of security monitoring and security configurations with ease through a suite of security-related tools. That is a mouthful. So in reality, what we want to break this down to is working with our customers to understand what security success looks like in the platform of platforms. We're going to dive into some key features and functions that will drive the ease of use and simplicity for ServiceNow admins and security professionals alike. So with easing that burden, what we're going to be talking about is a solution to help solve some of these problems for you. And hopefully by the end, we'll have an idea of what great security can look like in the platform of platforms. So to get some housekeeping out of the way, we have our safe harbor notice, and this is really to protect us against any forward-looking statements that might occur or might be said throughout the presentation. But in reality, I'm going to be talking about current technology. Now, some of that technology might be related to Utah, it might be related to Vancouver, it might be related to Washington, or even getting into some of the updates around those different packages that are installed with each of these versions that are in platform. Sorry, that was a tongue twister for me. My name is Joseph Pizzo. I am a security product analyst on the customer security and trust team. What we do on the customer security and trust team is we provide tools and guidance, support, and services to our customers to make sure that they are maintaining the highest level of platform security that they can. We're trying to ease some of the work surrounding what your responsibilities are. And I am really excited to share this information to you because this is important stuff. And this is stuff that we want you to take away and start using and start diving into to prevent any mishaps that might happen when it comes to security. So let's start with why. Why does this product exist? And this product largely exists to address the shared security responsibility model. Now, with this model, we have some responsibilities with our colo facilities that we manage, things that are like vetting or access to cages where data is stored and who's allowed to do what and when and how that's handled. Things that happen with the ServiceNow stack, and that's the middle where we have responsibility. And this is everything where our platform as a service runs in the back end and that slice that you're accessing. And then there's the customer responsibility. And the customer responsibility might seem to be a long list, but we really want our customers to understand that what we're looking to do is assist them with getting into their journey of security when it comes to the platform of platforms. Now, I'm a security guy. Some of you might be raising an eyebrow. If you're joining us, you were invited to join us. We were encouraged to join us. And I'm telling you, you can trust this QR code because this QR code will take you to the full shared responsibility model that will break down each section. So I'm going to encourage you to go and click on this to snap that QR code and hit that document. So you'll have that document saved in your back pocket. I would normally tell my friends and families, if you see a QR code in public, don't do it, avoid it. But we're not in public. This isn't some random QR code on a street pole somewhere. This is something you can trust us with. So go ahead, grab that, even take a snapshot of it so you have it for future reference. Now, when we talk about the shared responsibility model, we want to think of this as a partnership between the provider and the customer, both with specific responsibility. ServiceNow provides customers with a secure cloud and the tools to secure your instance and workflows. So when we think about this, we want to think about where can we apply Security Center to go out and hit the most bang for the buck security configurations. And these are the top 3 areas that Security Center really works around. And that's secure configurations of instances, authentication and authorization, and some data management in there as well. There's other areas, but some of those fall into advanced stages of your security journey where, and we'll talk about that, where a security journey might be crawl, walk, run. This is the stuff that helps get you into that crawl and walk phase. For those of you who are new to ServiceNow, this is where you can jump in and start on that journey and start taking advantage of some of the functionality of Security Center. And we haven't even defined it yet. We haven't even talked about what Security Center is. So we're going to get into that in a second. But one thing I want to point out is that when we have customers come through and say, well, why are you telling me all this? We're reaching back to industry experts who are coming to us and saying things like through 2025, more than 99% of cloud breaches will be traced back to preventable misconfigurations. And this is something that we take to heart because we want our customers to not have to juggle chainsaws when they're configuring the security of the product. Yeah, there's still going to be some things that you're going to have to go in and manually accomplish. But for the majority of this, we're going to get you to a secure by default out of the box. And then you'll be able to work through those configurations to understand what you can fix and what you can put in place to avoid those potential exploits and those potential breaches that might occur due to misconfiguration. So let's talk a little bit about proactive measures. And this is according to Snyk's 2023 State of Cloud Security Report. Now, this was hit with a number of different survey participants who gave back this information. And when we sit back and look at 80% of organizations surveyed had experienced at least one serious cloud security incident within the last 12 months, that's pretty big. That's a lot. We also have 67% of CISOs that have been interviewed highlighting security misconfiguration from production environments as a key cloud security threat. Misconfigurations, it's huge. And finally, 50% of the organizations shared that they experience 50 or more cloud misconfigurations per day. And what we're learning is that organizations must take proactive measures in order to improve their security posture and to ensure and avoid any security misconfigurations. Now, any is probably a loaded term because technology is constantly changing. We really want our customers to get ahead of any potential exploits that might occur. And things could happen, but as long as you stay on top of this and you get on your journey and you start working with your teams to build out things like quarterly meetings or monthly meetings to be able to go through and handle what's next on our configuration horizon. And that's where managing all of these security controls while expanding and customizing your workflows can be challenging. This is something where we have to start thinking about the security configurations, the monitoring, and the best practices. You can go to all of the settings and make this work on your own. These are things that you can take away and really adopt and really set a stage to be more secure. And this is a challenge to our admins to take this on and even get your teams involved. Get those teams involved, your security teams involved, so that they understand that there's things that they need to be concerned with. Now, before we go any further, we're going to kick off with a poll so that we get an idea of where we are, because there's a lot that's going on. So we have a poll out here, which is currently, how familiar are you with ServiceNow Security Center? And we're seeing some great results popping in already. You people are fantastic. We're going to give it a couple of minutes. Hopefully we can get a majority of the people to respond. And I see a lot of great responses coming in. So I'm going to end this poll and I'm going to share the results so that you can see exactly what we're talking about here and where you are. So when we think about this, we have that security what? We have a small percentage that are coming in and saying, hey, I don't know what this is. And that's okay. That's why we're here. And that's why we're talking about this. I have heard of it, but never used it as our largest response pool. And Today, hopefully, will get you to a point where you'll understand it, get to it, start using it. And I use it occasionally. That's actually a good thing. Occasionally is really what we want. We want to make that occasionally happen on a regular basis. So let's get it scheduled. Let's get our teams involved. Let's go and get our security contacts updated so that we understand who's going to be handling information related to security. And that's fine if it's still you, the admin of the platform. You can be that person. You can be that main point of contact. So let's move on. So this is where we're going to start defining what security success looks like. We want to ease the burden and help with that heavy lift. Prior to this, there were products like Instant Security Center, which really covered only a small portion of the configurations that were available. And prior to that, it was a matter of hunting and pecking through your instance to find these configurations in order to set them so that you were more secure. Well, we've changed and we've migrated and we've moved this into Security Center to deliver a stronger security posture. Now, when we break this down, we want to break it down to the feature groups. And the feature groups include security hardening, which is going to give us a score that's subjective to our organization. It's also going to be the umbrella for anything that's happening in platform. Security scanning is where I can go out and scan my instances and understand those user modifiable fields. Maybe we're an organization that takes advantage of custom tables, and we need to understand what we put in those tables and how we secure them. Maybe we need to learn more about security as it relates to the platform of platforms. Maybe we need to follow best practices and get on our journey or continue on our journey or follow through with critical updates, or as we call them, customer actions. That's where they've been named, or measure success with security metrics. There's a whole host of what's going on that's really, really going to be powerful for us. Now, where do we start with this? Well, one of the top areas that we think about is security hardening. And this is where we have a number of different security functions that we can go in and we can set to make sure our instance is hardened. Now, we work with our AppSec team to develop the practice of what needs to be included. And they come to us and they measure this constantly. And when we started this, there were about 175 different configurations. Today, there's about 210. And we're able to easily go into the product and understand how each of these instances and recommended configurations come back to us and how hardened they are based on a score from 1 to 100%. So when we go back to working on this, we're identifying where we're actually successful and what's working for us. It's pretty cool. Security scanner, as I mentioned, when we looked at those hexagons, this is where we can go and create a manual, a scheduled scan of your instance against a suite of security checks. Now, I want to break this down a little bit because when we think about this, our security checks are going to be inclusive of what's available out of the box, which I think is around 250-ish, but there's no limit to that. You can go and create security checks for anything that might be a user modifiable field, like a table, a column, a script, maybe a linter check where you can go and build these out and search for anything that could be malicious, or really like go out and cause us some pain if we don't identify and remediate some of these. Next, security metrics is where we can go and measure what's going on with the platform. Are people logging in? When are they logging in? Are we seeing failed logins? Are we seeing MFA logins? Are we seeing privileged users who should have MFA who aren't using MFA? Are we seeing people logging in locally? That's where we can go and determine this and measure this. And we're going to be talking about a specific use case that was brought to us by a customer that we thought was really powerful. We've used this story across a lot of our demonstrations and conversations with our customers to get them excited, because this stuff is really important. And this is how you get ahead in security. Next is learning. Learning is a place where I can go and gather some resources to understand and identify best practices to compliance documents and ServiceNow release notes. There's a whole central repository that will help system admins and security people gain more confidence around the security of the Now platform. In order to stay on top of learning and information so that your org doesn't fall behind is the biggest reason of importance behind this. Critical updates, or as we've renamed this recently to customer actions, you can validate any changes that are happening in the platform where you might be able to or might need to deprecate something like 3DES. Triple DES is out there, it's still being used, and it's in a password to field. We may be deprecating it, and we may have other methodologies and protocols in place that you can go and change this up. This is just a place to serve as a reminder for information, for changes to information that's provided in the platform. It's pretty cool to have some workflow available to you. One of the areas I get really excited talking about this because we talked a little bit about crawl, walk, run, right? This is where we can get on that security journey. We can jump into the crawl phase by building a foundation. We can jump into the walk phase by adding advanced features, or we can continue on with a trot / run / walk phase by optimizing the functionality. And this puts the power in your hands to really understand what's going on with these products. So let's talk about the key benefits. And when we break this down, we want to think about increasing our security posture. I need to feel more confident. I need to make sure that aside from my enterprise, my ServiceNow platform and the valuable data that's stored in there is secure. We want to make sure that that data is secure and no one who's unauthorized is going to get to it. We want to ensure compliance. We want to be able to have scores available that we can share with our management teams or our internal auditors to let them know that, hey, we have this functionality built in. We've gone through and we've secured these specific settings that needed to be secured. We've measured what we need to focus on for our organization. And this is where we are, and deliver this data to those people that are stakeholders in the security of your cloud. You can also get your security teams involved so that they understand this a little bit and they can answer the questions. Being able to identify and monitor potential threats. This is where we can go and see the actual metrics of what's going on. And we're going to talk about that once we get into the demo. We're talking about embedded learning resources in the learning portion of the product, addressing customer options to be able to go and make those necessary changes to things that may be deprecated or things that may need attention right out of the box. And then finally, following best practices to get or stay on that journey. And all of this increases trust and confidence in the ServiceNow platform. Now, this poll that we have coming up, we're going to ask this question twice. So we're going to do this now. You'll be able to answer this poll. And then after the demo, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about getting into the product, and then we're going to come back and repoll because we want to see if your mindset changes as we go through. All right. Oh, looking great. All right, I'm going to end this poll and I'm going to share this. And we got some great results here. We're looking at no one is coming in and saying not likely. So that's just after the presentation. We still see some people saying possibly I need to understand more, and hopefully by the end of the demonstration, we'll be able to sway you. And then finally, I can't wait to use Security Center. That's really big that we're seeing a big jump there. So I want to get into the product a little bit, and then we'll come back and talk about some resources that are available. So let's get this out of the way, and let me open up my screen here. And here we are. So here we are in Security Center. Now, one of the things we need to know, and I need to educate everyone on, is that Security Center is something that we need to, actually get to. We need to jump right into this. So when we break this down, how do we get there? Well, first, we go to our filter navigator. And in our filter navigator, we're going to type all available applications. If you're in front of your instance now, you might want to try it. Open it up. Go to all available applications. I'm sorry. I jumped ahead in my demo. Let's go to the right place. We're going to go to Security Center. We'll go to all available applications again later. So in here, if we type in Security Center into our filter navigator, we see two links for Security Center. I chose the top one and I added that as a favorite so that I can go right into my favorites menu and click on Security Center. We're going to go back to all available applications later because there's going to be some stuff we're going to be looking at on how to maintain this. So I apologize. I'm laughing at myself right now. But here, once it's in your favorites, you click on Security Center. This is going to take you right into the overview page. This is just a landing page that shows us information where we can go and look at non-production, or we can go and look at production, or we can look at user metrics that are available. We can see a whole host of information. This is going to show me right now. For production, we can look at all instances. If we have multiple instances, we can map out to those, kind of like a hub and spoke. We can also go through and we can look at things like our compliance score, and this matches to our hardening settings. We're going to talk about that in a second. But here we can see if there's any antivirus downloaded files or customer actions due metrics to look for as far as thresholds. We can go in and see user metrics to identify what users are doing what. We can identify login protection. Now, a lot of these are metrics that we'll also see on the metrics page, but I wanted to show you that at a glance. I can go in and see what are my top non-compliant scores. What are my top non-compliant hardening configurations? And how do we manage this? And we can go in and we can manage this and we can take advantage of this. We can see we have 3 high and the rest are moderate and low. If I treated this like vulnerabilities across my enterprise, I would focus on critical first, then high, then moderate, then low, then none. And we're doing the same thing here. It's a good thing that we have no criticals and we only see a couple highs. That might mean that we have a conversation coming up with our security team to discuss how to handle these. Maybe we have compensating controls and we don't need to worry about this. Maybe these are functions that we're really not using that we, don't need to worry about at this point. It's a matter of our organization's preferences as it ties to our policies as to how we handle a lot of this. We can see how we are with access controls. We can go and look at specific classified data and what we're looking at as far as that classified data. And then we can identify table columns, PII classified columns, and total PII columns. This puts us in a position to really understand what's going on with anything that's stored within our ServiceNow environment. Now, when we go into security hardening, this is where we can go and we can identify things like our any hardening score. So we can look at a hardening score from June 10th to September 1st, and we can see exactly what's changed. And right now we're looking at a change of 87% to 89%. But we can also identify the specific low hardening settings that have been changed, what specific domain they fall into, has it been set to compliant or non-compliant? And we could do the same thing with individual domains and go and identify the specific 3 settings that have been adjusted to jump up the score. Now, my score that reflects up here on the 1st, remember today's the 4th, we can go in and we can see that score jumped up. Today it's 90%. If we go and modify these and add a couple of these, that'll bring the score up to 91%. So that score and the score that we see over here, this 91%, is related to what's going on with my settings. And there are my 3 settings right there. And if we go in and look at our hardening settings, we can go in and see exactly what's going on here and start doing some work against them. And we can use platform functionality. So if you're used to using workspaces, this should be really exciting where you can go in and say, just show me the non-compliant, the compliant stuff, the stuff that we've already fixed. And here are my 3 top high scores that are out there, my highest priority. Now, I can go in and we can turn anything on or off, and we can go in and configure this however it needs to be configured. And here we have something that's saying waiting on discussion with security team. So that's telling me that the description is something that we need to go and talk to our team about. We also have functional impact that's related and documentation. We can add in activity in here as well and additional comments. But this is where we can go and take advantage of toggle switches. We can take advantage of configuring multi-factor. So clicking on and being taken to a specific configuration page. We can go and add in a numerical value or text value, depending on what that setting is. And we can go through and install plugins if that's going to be the security functionality that we need to include. So there's very easy methodologies to all of this. And all of the information is in the documentation. So you can go and track back to what's going on there. It's actually really cool stuff. Now, if we keep going and we start looking at our security scan comparison, this is where we're looking at scans from one date to another. So from the 23rd of May to the 7th of August, we can see that some scans came back with some information. If we click on them, it's going to take us down to this field down here that's going to show us exactly which field came back. And this is a critical priority. We can go in and we can click on this and we can see exactly what our need is to basically disable passwordless authentication. And this is telling us what we need to do here. So I can go and copy this, and we can go through and grab a specific task. And in that task, we can assign this to a specific person. And Able Tutor is our person that we're working with. We want this to be set as a new state. We want to give a short description to disable password less auth, and then put in the description and the work notes so that they know which field to go and work on. And when I save this, this will go into Able Tutor's queue. So they'll see this and they'll see that they have a job that's there and they'll be able to take advantage of that. That's really cool stuff. But let's take a step back, because maybe I'm solving a problem, but how do I get to that problem? Well, we have suites, and these suites are groups of checks. Now, with a suite, I can go in and I can schedule this, right? I can build out a schedule and say that I want to do this the fourth Tuesday of every month, track this through, build this out. No big deal. It'll come back and it'll give us a way to really measure this stuff. We can go and see the checks that are involved, and I can edit this and add checks to this. And we have a whole list of checks that are here. And we can go and start building this out based on what we want. But I might have additional checks that I want to include. Maybe we do a lot of customization and we want to go and check for any type of malicious code that might be thrown in there. So maybe we want to do a linter check. Maybe we want to look at scripts and see if there's any potential for any type of exploit to run against these scripts. I can go and build these out, or a table or a column check. And these are the checks that you're going to be limited to within this functionality. But there really isn't a limit to how you're going to handle this stuff, because when we break this down, we're going to have things like our short description, our resolution details, any run command that's out there, any column that we're going after, and specific function that we're looking at, and any code that might exist there. So we can build these out so that we can take advantage of this and keep moving and keep things working. So what we're doing is we're building scripts, we're adding checks to them, and then our results are coming back grouped based on the scan we ran. So if we go through and say, well, let's look at the access control auditor, we'll be able to see just the basic info, and then we'll be able to see the scan findings. And in the scan findings, we'll be able to go through and map to individual fields that are here to see what's going on. Now, this is where I encourage my ServiceNow admins to communicate with your security people, because you'll know specifically how to handle things in the ServiceNow world. Your security people may not. We want to get them educated on what do we worry about with UI page setup. Here's where we can go in and identify information. We can identify the resolution. We can identify, advanced scripting that exists in there. We can see exactly what's happening. And then we can take these findings and build these findings out so that we have that workflow that we can include there. So we can see exactly what findings exist, what suites exist, what checks have been completed, if there are failures, scan logs, scan statistics, and targets. I want to point out failures because these are things that you might identify or might be associating with things like configuration compliance, where you can determine what exactly is going on when you see these checks and when the tests pass and when the tests fail. It's actually pretty cool. Now, if you want to go after findings a la carte, you absolutely can by just going to the findings menu and clicking on any of these. And this will take you down that same path where you can say, hey, we have this finding, we can make a task, we can pass this information to those users, and they can start moving. They can start moving and taking advantage of what's going on with that specific functionality. I'm just doing a quick view of what's going on in my space. Now let's go into metrics. Metrics is where we can see what's happening. Now, I promised you a use case when I was going through the presentation. And one of the things I want to point out are some of the things we can look at. And here we're just looking at users. We can also look at privileged identity and see who out there is basically accessing things without having maybe a MFA associated. We might be able to see exactly who's using a lot of impersonations. These might be important. Maybe there's someone who's impersonating that shouldn't be impersonating. We can see who's logged out, what X509 certificates are expiring in 30 days, REST APIs without access policies. These are all important. But if we go to users, one of the things I want to point out is failed logins. Now, my environment's a demo environment, so I'm not going to have a lot of data in here. But one of our customers came to us a few months back and they said, we were actively working on some stuff, and we went in and we noticed that we were seeing a large number of failed login attempts occurring at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. Now, if this was happening on a Monday morning, they normally wouldn't be concerned, because Monday morning, maybe I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm logging in for the first time. And when I log in, I might fat finger my password, no big deal. Or I might fat finger my MFA. But what they noticed was on a Wednesday morning, they were seeing thousands of failed logins. And they went and looked through and they couldn't find anything successful. In fact, they had password resets set up that were going to specific emails, and customers weren't or users weren't reporting what was going on, that there were any problems. So nothing was really triggering. There were no password failures. But they went and passed this information over to their security team, and their security team took a look at ServiceNow and couldn't find anything, but then went and looked at other cloud products that they have and other internal products that they have. And they were able to identify that, yeah, there was some success in some places, maybe not huge, but some users who, somehow got around using a hard password, a more difficult password to guess, or a more complex password, or some users who weren't using MFA, they were able to identify in these other products that there was something going on. So it puts me into a real sense of pride to know that, and I get really excited to share this with my customers, to know that this is important beyond ServiceNow alone, because these are things that you can identify that can help your entire organization. And I think that's a pretty powerful story to tell. Now, if I was, a little bit of an egotist, maybe I'd drop the mic at that point, but I got a lot more to show. So let's go into a couple of the other areas and make sure that we cover what's necessary. Now, one area, critical updates. This is where we will alert you to things that are end of lifing or things that are changing that you might need to pay attention to. And this is where you might go in and say, oh, wow, I need to, deprecate my triple des because there's something going on. And we can go into the steps specifically to understand what's happening and have a workflow built around this. So we would go into step one, mark that as complete. Go into step two, follow those instructions, mark that as complete. Go into step three and follow those instructions and mark that as complete. And then validate your update and mark it as complete so that we can move on. We can also track the activity of what's going on and see who's been changing things. And I can add some activity updates as well. And with all of Security Center, if you look, you can see that we have the ability to use platform functionality, which I think is a fantastic way to get people to start using this, especially those who are really adept at using the platform. You could take advantage of this, treat it like your other workspaces, and get things done. Next, I get really, really excited to share this one because I find this to be one of the really fun areas to like jump into. And this is where we can get on that journey. And we have three areas: the crawl, walk, and the run. Now, when I talk to my customers, I really want them to be on a walk trot. I don't want them to get to a run because a lot of times we treat that run as a sprint. So let's avoid sprinting and let's make sure that we're able to breathe while we go through this. So let's start by building a foundation. And if you look at building a foundation, we can go through and we can do things like change the default login credentials. Well, that's something that you can easily do. We can go through and identify password complexity and build that out so we can see exactly what's happening there. We can go through and we can identify things like enable table auditing so we can go through and know what's going on there. Once we build that foundation, that's where we can go into the enhance and the optimize. And these are all really where we can go and build out and follow a workflow to be able to complete all of this functionality to create a password policy so that we have those difficult passwords, those complex passwords. We can set that strength so we can understand exactly what's going on. We can go and set those fields in the password policy form, and then finally test the password and go through to make sure that we have that. Now, this is just one setting. There are about 16 different settings in best practices that we could take advantage of. So we can go through and say, well, let's just go and look at and filter on the specific field for building out those configurations. And we can say, let's build out a foundation and let's focus on that today and apply that so that we can actually see what's going on and know how many different settings we have to adjust here. So there are 16 different settings. If we sat down and we did the research on all of these functions and followed each of these settings within a couple of days, maybe a week, we could be at a point where we are well on our journey and well into the walk phase. And this is important. This is really important to get this stuff in the crawl phase out of the way. These are the first things you should be doing in order to make sure that your data is protected in the platform of platforms. Now we're going to go into one last area, and that's the learning area. Learning is where we can go and take advantage of a whole host of information that's available to us so we can actively see what's going on. We can go and see where we are as far as platform version. We can go and identify product documentations. We can hit the portals so that we can go into core and update things like our security contact. We can go and figure out how to access ServiceNow Core if we haven't done that. Maybe we want to get our SOC reports so that we can understand that and share that with our teams. We might want to go and read up on our best practices or our instance security hardening settings. We might want to go and learn a little bit about encryption and key management to determine what do we need for encryption and key management. We can see security in depth and go through the data encryption book, the customer application pen testing, email spam and scoring, and then finally go through our regional and industry specific documentation so that we can identify where we stand with regional responsibilities that we have to maintain. So there's going to be some stuff that we really need to stay on top of. And this is where we can go and do that. Sorry, I was just getting my screen set up. So let's go back to that poll. And let's open up this poll now after you saw a little bit of the demo on how to get there. And then we'll wrap this up. We'll go into a couple of other things within the product so that you can take a look at how to maintain this and why I mentioned those all available applications before. So in the poll, after this presentation and demonstration, what is the likelihood you will use the Security Center moving forward? Fantastic. We're seeing some great numbers. We're seeing that possibly number dropping down. This is looking great. I'm going to stop this in a second so that everyone can see what's going on, see what we've identified. What I'm really thrilled about is that there are no longer any not likelies. This is fantastic because this is something that we can really sink our teeth into and get security done. Let's end this poll. I'll share this real quick and then we'll go back into a couple of things because I really want you to understand how to use this and how to maintain this. So let's go back into the interface and we're going to look at one thing specifically because there's some cool stuff that we can focus on. Now, before I flubbed and I typed in all available applications. Now, one thing I want to point out that I may not have mentioned is that this is part of platform. There is no additional charge. So this is something that we started out as a small product. It started out really as a replacement for our previous version of Instant Security Center. And prior to Instant Security Center, you'd hunt and peck for these settings. So we've built this product up to include so many more settings and so many more features and functions to provide for more enhanced security. But we need to stay on top of this update. So one of the things I'm going to walk you through right now is going in and actually identifying how to know where you are with Security Center. And this is where if we search on Security Center, we go to all available applications, we search on Security Center, then we go to installed, we'll see that Security Center is there. But one of the things we want to do is we want to sync now. So when we sync this, this is going to go out and it's going to look to see if there is an updated version. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm at the latest version, but I could have something that maybe it's something that was released that I missed. We typically release 4 versions a year. So one with each family version and then one each quarter post family version release. So we'll be able to see this stuff. Now, once we have that, we can go in and we'll see if there's the ability to install a new version. We can track our installed versions and we can see our install logs. We can see our installed files. We can see our customized files. And we can also go into and update any details that we might be looking at as well and see what changes have applied based on those updates. So this gives us a really good view of what's happening. Again, we want to go to all available applications, go to all, and then in all, we want to be able to see exactly what's happening out there. So that's Application Manager. We want to look for Security Center, go to Installed, and then from there, we can check exactly what's going on, and we can see that we're up to date here. You may not be. If you're on Utah, you'll have to go out and install Security Center from the store. For Vancouver and beyond, it is included in platform. And you will need to go for each one and search for latest versions. So I want to point that out so that you have that ability to go and do that and you stay on top of those updates. Now, let's go back and let's hit that presentation and wrap this up because I want to share some resources that we have available. Now, we've talked about a lot of things. I had that QR code up so that you can go and grab that shared security responsibility model. Here's where we can go and identify the Security Center documentation. We can identify the Now Learning Security Center training, which is huge. Go and talk to your admins, talk to your team, make sure you have a Now Learning account. Go and look at this and grab this. There's also a video library where you can go and view videos around ServiceNow Security Center. And these are small bites. These are bite-sized videos that you can watch in some cases 3 minutes, some 5, some 8. There are a longer form demonstration, and they're constantly being updated and added to. So go and hit these because on top of that, there's support from the ServiceNow customer security and trust team, as well as your partners. Get your partners involved if you don't have the resources or the time to work on this stuff. Now, let me move into the next couple of slides. And let's talk about the takeaways. Security Center is part of platform. If you're on Utah, go to the store and download it. If you're on Vancouver or beyond, you can go and you can download. It's already part of your platform. It's there. Just go to your filter navigator, search Security Center, and that's how you'll get to it. Security Center improves organization security postures with embedded security best practices and recommendations. Get on your journey. Start talking about what you need to include in that. Get your teams involved, your security teams, get your infrastructure teams, get your cloud teams involved to talk about this, to understand. Hold your other cloud vendors responsible. Get them to step up to what ServiceNow is doing for our customers, because security is going to be important to everyone. And then finally, we want our admins to leverage the detailed learning resources to gain more control of your instances. Because realistically, I want my Security Center admins to really understand and be able to carry that conversation with the security professionals. I don't want you to feel intimidated by this. And if you're a security professional, encourage those admins to start learning a little bit more. A little bit of security doesn't hurt. It really helps. It helps drive the security of the platform. It'll help drive your career as well. And that's why these things are important. So I'm going to open up to questions, and I know that we have some in the chat. So let me look at this. Are scans executed against a recent backup, or are they executed against the live instance? They are executed against the live instance. And let me break this down a little bit, because realistically, you should be doing some UAT, right? So you want that user acceptance testing, and you want to do this in subprod. So you want to get this running in subprod to understand what the impacts are and what the specific functions of that security event or security protection might be offering. You want to get this to a point where you feel really comfortable. You have your UAT, your end users can get through using the products that they have out there. They can get through their workflows. They can start jumping into AI, and this isn't going to stop them, but you want to test it. So you want to get this out there, and you want to run those scans against your subprod environment. Now, once you have that and you know what's going on in subprod, you're going to make those changes in both subprod and prod. So you'll continue running that scans. If I were to scan every single check out there, it might take about 45 minutes. So it might be something that we might want to do, once a month on a Saturday when we're in a blackout period, or we're in maybe we're in a maintenance period that we can go and do this. Hope that answers your question. My Security Center app is up to date, but I do not see best practices or notifications. So for that question, I'm going to ask if you are on, if you have moved to Washington, right? So in Vancouver and in Utah, not every new feature is backwards compatible. And that's why we really want our customers to plan out their family upgrades. And that's why we suggest N-1 as being the minimum. So if you're in Vancouver, you're on N-1. Once you go to Washington, or when Xanadu comes out, that's when you'll see those upgrades coming in. Now, we're working on making that a little bit better, because we will have customers that will stay on Vancouver for a long time, or they'll stay in Utah for a long time, and they'll plan their updates to be, once every, 2 years, maybe they'll have their updates because their UAT takes some time, or their, implementation of ITOM discovery took some time, and they really need to discover what's going on their network and build their CMDB. So this is where we start seeing that, sometimes there's a lack of that. But that's going to be dependent, because not every version includes the latest. And it also doesn't have complete parity with what you might see with your health scan results. So we want you to stay on top. We want you to make sure you update, make sure if you have a subprod environment, you can test this and you can start working on this and get up to those N-1 family releases so you can take advantage of the newest stuff. You are on V160. I have 134, and it says I am up to date. We are running Washington. Well, that's a little weird. pardon me, that might be something that you need to work with permissions around. Maybe you just don't have permissions, or maybe you need to sync again, because I've seen that happen with my instance where when I sync, it's not going to map, it's not going to map directly at that time. So I've had to go and run a sync a couple of times in order to get that. If you're still running into that, I encourage you to reach out to your account team and open up a case with us. Get your partner involved. They may need some additional support involved to assist you getting over that hump there. I don't see any other questions. There's nothing else in the chat. No hands being raised. All right. I'll give it another minute. I'll give it another couple of seconds. All right, if there's no other questions, again, my name is Joseph Pizzo on behalf of myself and my partner on the call, Chris Dinger, who's been handling all of the stuff in the back end, from getting the polls up to answering questions when my eyes weren't on that screen, to making sure that I was on time and keeping good time. We both want to thank you so much for joining us. And again, if there is anything that you need, reach out to your account team. They can open what's called a field security request and get us involved. Go and hit those QRs, hit the documentation, go take the training, go and look at those videos and start consuming that, because this is going to be something that's going to help you avoid any of those exploits that are tied to those specific hardening settings, scanning settings, and give you the metrics that you really need. Thank you again, and make it a great day.